In 1986, the world bared witness to Highlander. Highlander was an intense action-adventure film that featured immortals, men who battled each other using swords, and the only way they could be killed was to be beheaded in battle. Really an innovative concept, but it was way ahead of its time. The original Highlander film did not perform well at the box office, only pulling in about $12.5 million on a $19 million budget. So even though it was poorly received in the theater, the movie quickly became a cult favorite around the world in the years to come, especially in Europe, where the origins of the characters come from. The movie had awesome performances from Sean Connery and Clancy Brown, and introduced the world to Christopher Lambert, who you may know as Lord Raiden from the first Mortal Kombat film. But, even though it grew a cult following there in the coming years, fans clamored. They wanted more Highlander. There's just one problem though. Highlander, the movie, was an open and shut case. There was really no way to have a sequel to Highlander. According to the film, the game was over, as the Immortals called it. Connor MacLeod had killed the Kurgan and become the last living immortal. So, if the game is over, how can you possibly continue the Highlander franchise? Well, you do what any sane person would do. You turn this story about century-old immortals battling with swords into some intergalactic sci-fi fantasy fairy tale where Sean Connery's resurrected and you just have a crazy military general trying to kill Connor MacLeod, right? Makes a lot of sense. I'm of course talking about the second Highlander film, The Quickening, which came out in 1992. It bombed at the box office as well, and Siskel and Ebert even said that it's the equivalent of what would have happened if you gave Ed Wood a multi-million-dollar budget. That it would live on in sci-fi lore as one of the most horrendous films ever made. Not only one of the worst sequels ever made. And I'll be honest, I've never even watched the movie beginning to end. I like to just pretend it doesn't exist, because it's totally pointless. So, with that being said, at this point it looks like Highlander is probably dead and buried. Well, that same year in 1992, they decided to launch Highlander the series. And the whole point of this was to introduce a new character named Duncan MacLeod. And Christopher Lambert actually showed up in the pilot episode of the show as though the second film never happened. And as though that the Kurgan was not the last living immortal when he killed him. So they basically just rewrote the mythology and said, well, Connor MacLeod killed the Kurgan, but there's still 1,000 other immortals out there, and one of them is his clansman Duncan MacLeod. Fair enough. The show was very well received in its first couple seasons. So much so that it actually resurrected the Highlander movie franchise a couple years later with the third film, starring Mario Van Peebles along with Christopher Lambert. The Sorcerer did also not do very well and was also negatively received, although I think it's a decent film. However, the show continued to rage on in popularity. The TV series would end up having 6 seasons and a terrible spin-off, which we covered yesterday. But back in 1994, as the third season was getting ready to go and the third movie was coming out, Highlander was at its peak, and it really had quite the cult following across the world. And so what do? Well, the logical step to capitalize on the money is to try and introduce the concept of immortals cutting each other's heads off to little kids.
Yes, at last.
Yes, at last. For so many different reasons. And I'm not just referring to the fact that I gave you that nice Highlander history lesson, which I hope you enjoyed. I'm referring to the fact that, boy, this was the hardest episode of the Kidnapper's Corner I have ever made. Decided to do Highlander week. Had forgotten about some scenes that I mentioned before. Decided to use Brian's page as a resource, which most of you guys, a lot of you guys know about Brian's page for Scene Database. As I was searching for Highlander, I came across an entry in there for Highlander the Animated Series. Well, I had heard of this series before. Obviously, I'm not a big cartoon guy, and you know, I when it was around, I wasn't, I didn't know about it, or I probably would have watched it when I was younger. But so the entry in the database did not give the episode in which the scene they had in there came from. So I wanted to do it because it sounded like a good scene. So luckily there's a cartoon uploader named Bonkers D Bobcat on YouTube who has all 40 of the Highlander animated series episodes uploaded in full. So I had to start from the beginning to find this scene because there was no way to know where it came from, and I finally caught the scene on episode 35. So I watched the first 35 episodes of the show, did not finish the last 5 yet. If there's something else in those last 5, maybe it'll show up here again if it's worth showing. Most of the scenes in this show, and I found a lot more that weren't in Brian's page, which I may have to submit myself. I'm going to put the episode title, modify the entry, or try to give them the episode title for that scene so nobody else goes through the hell I went through. Not that it's a bad show. It's really not, but I'm pressed on time. I've been editing my nearly 30,000 word story for its release, which is today. Hopefully it's either already out or will be out by tonight. So I've been really pressed, which is why, at last, it's time for the scenes. Also at last, because you guys have been asking for animated scenes. A lot of people wanted animated scenes for a long time now. And our very first episode of the Kidnapper's Corner was Highlander. The pilot episode of Highlander the series. So I figured our very first animated scene should also be Highlander. So we have Highlander the animated series here, which took off, ran from 94 to 95, like I said, 40 episodes. And there is a main damsel in the show. That's who we're going to kick it off with. Quentin MacLeod is the main character in the show. This redhead kid. And his little sister, very cute little sister Clyde, gets into trouble a lot. She never got the full treatment from what I've seen so far. It's not happening. But she was hand-gagged and captured quite a few times. And so that's what I'm going to run through here. The first one's from an episode called Treasure in the Sand, I think. She's woken up while sleeping and hand-gagged and taken away. There's another episode where she's hand-gagged by a good guy to keep her quiet, but it looks like she's in peril at first. Then there's another one where she's hand-gagged and captured while Ramirez is in a sword fight. That's not the Ramirez from the movie, by the way. I think he has a different name. It's supposed to be like a relative of Sean Connery's. So she's hand-gagged there 3 times. And then I'll show you, there's a little scarf scene where they're driving in the snow, and they have to put the bandanas over their mouth or over their nose, you know, like this. It has to go over the nose, because if it's over the nose, you can talk, but if it's then you can't if it's down below the nose. That's how the OTM gag works in the cartoon. So that's about the closest Clyde ever got. So I'll run through all those scenes here with her, and then we'll move on to the next scene.
You come with me. The rest of you get those animals.
viaduct is surrounded, Lord Cortan.
Go! Go! Please answer me!
You barely escaped, little girl.
Go! Stop!
Don't worry. They're not after Gaul.
It's okay.
Looks like your little adventure has come to an end. Take them away! Quentin!
Got it!
You and me, Iraq, if you dare. Your men are watching. You're not going to let them down, are you?
I thought you gave up fighting, Ramirez.
For you, I'll make an exception. Did you enjoy today's lesson, Iraq?
Ramirez!
Not one more move.
All right. Just don't hurt her.
How typical. To hide behind a child.
No, Arak, you have no right to do that!
You're finished.
Sir! No! Sir! Sir! You fool, Iraq!
I didn't mean to. He ran into it. It was an accident. Quentin, quick!
Quentin, I'm scared! They're gonna catch us!
Step on it! We're losing ground. Faster!
Don't worry, sis. We'll lose them.
Pretty good hand gagging scenes. Some good kidnappings there. And now we're going to move on to this dickhead bureaucrat who you saw get slashed by the general in one of the episodes here already. This dick named Asclepios, who I think is like a ripoff of Dulcine from Street Fighter. He's captured. MacLeod and Ramirez infiltrate Cortan's base and string him up and OTM gag him. He ends up talking through the gag at the end, and then it's shown that he knocked it down somehow, but just so he could talk there, I guess. But that's a good scene. They got like a fire lit to him or something. I'm not really sure how that system works, but yeah. So he's OTM gagged and shut and strung up, and someone needed to shut him up too, because he's a dick in the series.
In order to disperse our men, to draw them further away from the control center.
No, you're wrong, Valka. You're... What is it?
Those rebels will pay dearly for their resistance. Every last one of them. Go and join Iraq's troops. Show no mercy.
Now, deliver this message to Cortan. And don't betray us.
I'll do as you ask.
Be sure you convince Cortan to halt the attack on the Dundees. And get back here. Quickly, otherwise... Only the ruins of Magonda will remain.
Help me, my lord, help me. Please save me. Oh. Oh. Thank you, my lord. You saved my...
Your life, Asclepios? No. My city. Take him down.
If it had been me, I would have saved a second arrow for you.
Save your arrows, Arak. With your rate of success, you'll need every last one of them.
So that's what we got there. And then our finale for this episode, which is what came from Brian's page.
We were afraid the Immortal would do something awful.
The Immortal?
It won't be long. We'll take his head and stop the sacrifices and earthquakes.
Earthquakes?
Clyde!
It's the Immortal!
Catastrophe! It's the revenge of the Immortal!
Hurry up, Clyde! Quick!
Head for the mountain, Quentin. We've got to find out where that explosion came from. Hunter tread marks. First an explosion, followed by a landslide. Next, hunters in the area.
These so-called catastrophes are Cortan's doing. We've got to inform the miners. They'll see it's not my fault.
No, Quentin. They'll never listen to you. We're going to need more proof.
They came this way.
Get out your picks! Go for his neck!
The miners have passed the west face.
I'm going to remove this, but if you make one sound...
Do what you want with me, but please spare my son. Don't sacrifice him in your temple tomorrow.
I hope you appreciated that. It took me 35 episodes to get to that. MacLeod grabs this lady. Her and her friends want to kill the Immortal for some reason. There's something going on in the town they live in where they're convinced Immortals are evil. So Ramirez gags are on screen, OTM. Nice detective gag cartoon right there. And they take it off after a very short period of time. Like, it's probably right after a commercial break. But there's no commercials in this, so... but yeah, she does some oofing, and that's pretty good right there. That's all. That's really, there were a lot of little minor capture scenes and whatnot, but the show did pretty good for a cartoon. So I hope you guys appreciate me digging for all that, because man, it took some time to get. This is the most difficult episode of the Kidnapper's Corner I've ever made, but that's why I do it, to bring you guys stuff you haven't seen before. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good show actually. It's, for a cartoon, probably the highlight of it is the main bad guy Cortan, and his little buddy Malone. these two are pretty funny, actually. Malone is his human's weapons key. He has to plug his body into the wall to release his sword.
Malone, open the weapons room. I want my sword. I myself will lead the reinforcements.
Eternal power to Korten!
Open the door.
Yeah, Korten's a pretty cool villain. Obviously, if you know Highlander mythology, if you're a main villain in Highlander, you have to have K for your name. You know, Kurgan, Kane, Kel, Kronos, Korten. They even refer to him as Almighty K in one of the episodes. There's a few other immortals throughout the series whose last name also started with K. Even Michael Ironside's stupid general in the second Highlander movie, his stupid character started with K. But yeah, it's a cool show. If you like cartoons, you'll enjoy it. Like I said, all the episodes are on YouTube. So that's what we got today, folks. Our first ever animated episode. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.
The miners have passed the west face.
Oh, we forgot to bring flowers. He's going to think that we don't care.
This gas can modify the chromatic frequencies of any object. Something like the skin of a chameleon, but better. Much more accurate.
Oh! I knew your mission was experimenting on this, but I didn't know that you'd actually succeeded. Thank you, Emerson.
But Korten! Our pact!
Must I remind you that in the end there can be only one? It was nice to see you again.